We're here with Brennan Costello. Thank you for joining us today, Brennan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm just going to describe you. Brennan Costello is director of TheCombine, which runs an ag tech incubator that provides support, mentorship, and resources to help early stage companies develop new technologies for the agriculture and food industry. Brennan was previously chief business relations officer at the University of Nebraska's Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program and worked at several ag-focused startups before that. He has an MBA and an undergraduate degree in agribusiness leadership and entrepreneurship, both from University of Nebraska. Brennan, thanks for joining us at the Food and Ag Tech Huddle.
Thanks. Yeah, and shout out to the new tech folks. I saw there's a couple on the call. That's the Nebraska's tech transfer office.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive in. Unlike many incubators, the Combine doesn't run cohorts. Tell us about how you deliver your services to startups.
Sure. So we call ourselves we call ourselves an incubator, essentially because we don't do like classes or cohorts like a traditional accelerator would do. And a lot of times those accelerators, they're looking for or companies that are in the same spot, the same traction level, so they can kind of run everybody through the same curriculum. The Combine, we are connected to Invest Nebraska, which is our state-funded economic development venture capital firm. And so our focus and mission is to help Nebraska-based founders build a company. And so because of that, we operate more like an incubator where it doesn't matter what stage you are. If you're doing something in ag tech, we're going to work with you. Our goal is one-on-one. So we don't take any fee, we don't take any equity. We kind of meet founders where they're at, which I think is really helpful because if a founder is a university researcher that's needs to kind of learn the venture process, we can work through that. If it's an ag tech entrepreneur, or if it's an entrepreneur that has, knows how to build companies but wants to get into agriculture, that's a little bit different. We can work with that. And so it just allows us to kind of be a team member to help people move forward.
How many companies are you working with at a time?
We have about 30-ish companies that are engaged with us, being an incubator and working with them one-on-one. That's different levels of help, right? So I have a couple that, we're working with very, very, very closely because they're a little bit closer to that kind of getting ready for a raise. And then there's some that we work a little bit less closely with, but we still try to help them move forward, maybe more as like a networking partner or helping them get connected into Nebraska.
How do you do you have regular meetings with them, or how do you kind of
Yeah, it
keep
just
your
kind of depends
cadence
on
going?
what the company needs, and so we just try to do regular check-ins with them, and then like I give people homework. I'm not afraid to do that. Of just like, hey, here's the thing we need to work through. Go do that. We'll set up the next meeting for when we need to work through that next. And so part of it also is the speed at which people can go, right? Like if you're full time, really growing, working on the business, we can work really, really closely together. If you still need to have a full time job somewhere, we can kind of adjust that to help you get to go the speed that you can go. But I always tell people velocity is really important if you want to build a tech company. So the faster we can go, the better. So it's always an encouragement to the different types of companies that we're working with.
And yeah, what's the breakdown? Is it faculty, students, people from the community? Where do they all come from?
Yeah, I would say it's about one third of each of those that you kind of talked about. So for fact, we have the Combine is structured as a private nonprofit program. So we are located on the Nebraska Innovation Campus, just like a research park. But I'm not an employee of the university, which is really nice because I can be a great partner to the university, but don't I can avoid some of the bureaucratic challenges that are sometimes associated with the university. But I can be a really good partner and help things move. I am not in the private industry, but I can be a part of it and can be a really good partner there. And then we're a little bit outside the state government, so I can be a really good partner there. So it allows us to be kind of the spot where we can move around a lot, and so that helps us access a lot of people. So we have about one third probably who are research have an interesting, research project, and they're trying to figure out how to turn it into a business. Got a couple students. We got a big chunk of then what I would call, everyday entrepreneurs that are people that come from industry. Like for example, I have a cattle producer who's been in the cattle business for a really, really long time, identified a problem in that industry, and wants to design a tech solution. So he is not the technical founder. So a lot of that coaching is like, how do we help that tech? How do we help him adapt the technical side? Versus like working with a researcher, they are the technical founder, right? So then it's how do we add the CEO skills about commercializing a product. What does that look like? So we can adjust based on the people that are in it.
How do these people find you?
We try to be active in just the startup community, and really just work through partners, right? So like we partner a lot with um, like new program. So like that's a great resource for as soon as they get done with that, then it's a great transition into the combine if they're working on an ag product. We try to be really active in the ag market. I consider like my job to be a connection for a lot of people to Nebraska's ag market, and so making sure that as our trade associations or our large corporations have people with ideas, like then they can come to us to be kind of a front door to help them move forward. So just generally trying to network. We host one conference every year called Ag Tech Connect in July. It's kind of a tent pole for what's going on in ag tech in Nebraska. That's been really helpful also in just kind of raising awareness for what we're doing.
You also have a big network of farmers. Do you connect them with startups when appropriate?
Yeah, so that it's one of the things when the combine got started that was really important was if we're going to build companies in Nebraska, then they need to have the practicality that, an ag producer has about business and about how to do things. And we thought that was really important. I think maybe they had seen if you have followed kind of the ag tech industry, we've seen some ag tech companies come from the coasts with a lot of good funding, which some have done well, some have not done well at all. And I think a little bit with producers, there's a fatigue in creating another login for another piece of software and having to learn how to do this. So we wanted to make sure if you're building a business that's front facing towards a farmer, that it is really proven that this is what farmers want. It's solving a problem that farmers and producers care about, and the business model makes sense, which is probably the biggest coaching piece that I have a lot of times in ag tech companies is like it's usually the problem is not technical, right? There's really smart people that can figure out how to build this solution. But the big challenge in ag tech, just given the fundamentals of an agriculture business, is the business model. And so making sure that works if you're working with a producer is really, really important. So much of the ag tech industry is dependent on the farmer's income. So for us, it was important to make sure that it's the farmers are connected to that. So we have about 100 farmers who we can tap on for customer discovery and then for prototype testing. They're kind of along the range of what I would call an early adopter. So some of them really want to know what's coming out next. They want to try stuff. They're not worried if it looks like duct tape and popsicle sticks, like they want to try it out. And then some are a little bit more on like the early sales size of like, once you have a prototype, I want to see if it works on my farm. So I want to test it out. And some just love talking to entrepreneurs. And so that's a great one for the customer discovery piece.
Well, they are entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Like-minded. Are you in Lincoln, Nebraska?
So we have a co-working space in Lincoln, Nebraska, on our research park or innovation campus, that allows us to get some discounted office space to startups. It also allows, which is an advantage if a startup is working out of our space and they become affiliate member with the Nebraska Innovation Campus, so they get some added benefits for that. And Nebraska Innovation Campus has a lot of service centers, for if you're building some sort of biotech company. Um, if you're building a robotics company, like there's a lot of places right there on campus that can help you build. But the way we operate in terms of servicing startups is across the state, and so we do a lot of just distance connections, and so you don't have to physically be in Lincoln. If there's a company in Scottsbluff, which is our western edge of the state, that I work with. And so they're pretty spread across the state in terms of where the companies are being built. And I think that's important. If you're building something in ag, you need to have a presence out where your product is operating. And so that's important to us as well.
Well, this geography question too. You were formed under Invest Nebraska, and your charter is to work with Nebraska startups. There's a way you can justify working with startups outside of Nebraska, and let's talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So Invest Nebraska, it's a venture capital firm funded by state dollars, right? And so the idea is build companies in Nebraska that are going to grow, economic value in Nebraska, build jobs in Nebraska. And so the Combine, we're focused on companies that can build in Nebraska and help towards that mission. But that doesn't mean that if you are not born and building in Nebraska, that if you want a presence in the Nebraska ag market, the Combine can be a soft landing place to do that. And so um, more and more working with, I'm kind of calling them affiliate companies, but if you're not based in Nebraska, but you know that your product or service needs to access the Nebraska's market, then we can be your entry point in terms of getting connected with the right relationships here and finding, if you're doing some sort of plant or something like that, we can be a great intro into the connections that you need here. And if you can start getting on farms, if you have, that farmer facing product, through our insights network or through our partnerships with the university, then that's a great way to start to grow the market here. So our idea is we want to work with you if you potentially could Nebraska access Nebraska's market with the hope that you would establish, more of your business here. That could be moving here, that could be opening an office here. That's just kind of our thought process is the better relationships and connection you have into our market, the more likely that, this would be a place where you want to continue to build.
You mentioned Insights Network. What's that?
That's what we call our farmer network is the Insights Network.
What kind of startups are in your sweet spot? I'm sure corn, in the corn husker state is part of the answer, but
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, similar to what was just being shared, one of our goals is kind of that value added post-harvest products. And so there are a few different like biotech companies. We don't have that pilot plant, and so we work with partners like that to help our companies continue to grow. We have kind
like
of that
IFAB in
showcase.
Illinois,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, with IFAB. And so uh that's one area for the state that they're very, very focused on. We are I think the number two ethanol producer in the state. So a lot of the companies that are being built are these bolt-on type of companies of like how can we take that ethanol and turn it into other products. So that's a big emphasis for the state right now. So that's a heavy focus. The other things that I think are uniquely, when you think like it should reflect what Nebraska's ag economy looks like. We should build companies around those verticals. And so the four major irrigation producers are all headquartered in Nebraska. So
Mhm.
water, and we have an institute at the University of Nebraska that's focused on water. So water technology is naturally a vertical. So I think 75% of our acres are irrigated. So it's just this huge amount of irrigation that's happening in Nebraska. So any sort of water technology, Nebraska is a really good place to be at for that. So that's a vertical that we're growing. And then the other one that's kind of interesting is this what I call physical AI. So if you were doing some sort of robotic or sensor or AI technology, what does that look like when you actually apply it into the field or into the feedlot or actually in real person? How do we do that? And so we have kind of a growing cluster of companies that are approaching kind of that process of taking technology and putting it into agriculture with a sense of like, AI isn't just software, like how do we actually put it into the field? So lots of robotic companies, lots of sensor companies, things like that, that Nebraska is starting to build a cluster around. We have a autonomous feed truck. We have grain weevil. It's a robot that goes inside grain bins. We've got some sensors for some new planters that are coming out. So that's kind of an area that we're trying to grow in as well.
You see such a range of startups in the work you do, and there must be so many factors, well, challenges and opportunities that are specific to operating these startups. Can you talk about a few of them that, yeah, it's fascinating the range of things you must deal with.
Yeah, I mean we define ag tech pretty broadly. Like if you're doing something in agriculture that has that high growth technology piece, like we want to work, we're trying to stay broad in the sense of that of you know our mandate is our state, so like as broad as we can within the ag tech industry. But the things that I probably see that are pretty common with this are like if you want to build a high growth company, the first thing that these funders are going to ask you and be curious about is they're going to want to know the problem that you're solving. I think often, especially when I'm working with researchers, um, they have research that they're very passionate about. They spent a ton of chunk of their life developing and looking at this research. Well, we have to make sure that that research, that product that you have, is really solving a really important big problem that's um, valuable to solve, right? That it can't be too often the challenge is the technology looking for a problem rather than a problem looking for a solution. So that piece is always kind of the big first piece is let's make sure that we're solving a really big problem that we can build off of. It doesn't always have to be the first thing though. Like I talked about grain weevil, it's this little robot that goes inside grain bins. That first started as a safety product. A father and his son were into robotics. Their farmer asked them, like, hey, build me a robot that can keep me out of a grain bin, kind of to avoid the grain entrapment issues. And so they built a robot that could do it. Well, what they ended up building was a really expensive safety product that probably was outside the market that most farmers are willing to spend on a safety product. But through their work, they found that the actual ROI is grain management. So a lot of these large grain storage businesses that think of like an ADM or Schooler, which have huge facilities. You put these robots in there, and they can actually better store the grain, better manage the grain. They reduce shrinkage and they reduce labor, and it was this huge ROI for facilities like that. So through their process, they actually found the problem that was bigger. So that's the important piece. Is like it doesn't have to be the first thing, but you have to look in this kind of short runway that you have as a startup with limited funding, finding the really important problem is really and being open and looking for that, right? Being not being so closed in on here's exactly what it's happening. That's the first big one. And then the second big one that we're always working on is team, right? A startup founders are often not funded very well. It's mostly about who is on your team that can grow together. If you're a researcher, it's really important you find someone who has the business side of what you can do, right? Who knows the market that you can grow together. If you're not the technical person, right? Finding someone who fits really well that can do the technical side of what you're doing. That's what funders are looking for is someone that they're excited and can trust that this team can do it and can build it. And so those are probably the two things we spend most time having conversations about. I'm not a technical person, so a lot of the time, like the figuring out the technical piece, that's on the technical person. Our job is really figure out like how do you build towards a problem and get the right people on your team so that it unlocks funding for you. And a lot of times, those are the two big things that people are looking at.
What a great flywheel you're creating, though, because the more you do it, the more connections you have and the more people you can bring in. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I think that's why it's important. And, you know, we got a variety of states here. Is that if your state is an agriculture economy state, that there's some organization that is just trying to grow the ecosystem. There's some states that are really good at this and been doing it for a long time, so they have this big flywheel wheel built. I think Nebraska is growing, but I'm excited for the future because as you do it and as you get more companies in the state and more exits in the state, you have more talent in the state, and you can continue to grow the ecosystem.
It's very inspirational, Brennan. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us.
Yeah, thank you.
So we are now going to move to